And welcome back to XGS Season 7, Day 2, excuse me, my god. It's your boys once again, Goose and T-Van on the desk after what was, I think, a banger map 1 of Final Form versus SSGA, and we got another banger, back-to-back bangers, one might even say, of the Mormon Battalion versus MKERS. Goose, we've been talking about it a lot. How you feeling about this match?
You know, you can't say a lot when you're going up not only the reigning E3 champions, but a team that beat Wildcard 2-0 both maps in regulation. We don't really need to say a lot. You know exactly. And I do think, though, out of, the lower echelon teams, this is one of the teams that could put up the best fight. Maybe if this goes into overtime, in my opinion, it could go either way. But again, it depends not only on the map, but I say this every time I cast a best of one. Best of ones are the place to upset a team better than you, and potentially we could see that today.
Well, and I feel like Mormon Battalion is that team, that roster that is probably going to be upsetting these big rosters. I feel like they're the team that shows the scrappiness, the willingness to get a little bit dirty playing the game and winning the rounds that really they shouldn't. We saw it on Cafe against SSGA yesterday. They were willing to kind of play scrappy, force the enemy team to rethink their strategies, go back to default, right? And even use things like alt chat, which are, I believe, in the patch notes of last night got nerfed for Mormon Battalion. They still have that kind of X factor to them, where they don't really care about what the meta is or the structure of the game is. They're willing to frag out and make some weird plays that MKERS might not be prepared for.
Speaking of Mormon Battalion, let's see who's actually going to be in the lobby playing today. Talked about it yesterday. Well, okay. It looks like we're not going to rosters. All right. Well, no, it's all right. Well, we've talked about it that, Mormon Battalion made up of both the main and the academy roster for wanted goons. So you're going to have that leadership of XGS paired with, some of the younger gunners against, again, the reigning E3 champs.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen these names before, especially the maker names. I mean, if you follow this level of esports, you're probably fans of them. I feel like they're kind of that unknown team, or not unknown team, not to discredit them, but when they're going into E3, they were kind of set down as underdogs, especially in my eyes when they're going up against T1 teams like Wildcard, who has a literal bundle in the game, shutting them down completely. MKERS have a name that they really want to uphold and push to themselves, right? We have these players like Bino, like Idiot, like Packer that are really feisty in the lobby, and if they want to start to make it a run for it, they want to get that tier 1 status, and XGS is kind of one of those steps that they want to conquer to get to that point.
Yeah, not only that, but this is their Season 7 debut game. Another little bit of a scary factor to go in. But on top of that, even with winning E3, they don't have that ticket into Pro League yet. So they're still going to be in these T3 leagues fighting not only to prove themselves, but to continue to make themselves better as players and teammates going into the major calls and eventually SI qualifiers late this year, early next year. So leagues like these are going to be really good. And for Mormon Battalion, I talked about it a little bit yesterday. They're just simply trying to find their footing. And, you see that defensive win rate with a 20%. It is a little bit scary. But again, you have to, factor in SSG just going absolutely huge. But again, no subs today, so both teams are going to be playing at their fullest. We're having Siege, Exer, Hectic, and Toaster and Eli to lead us into this best of one today.
Yeah, and when Mormon Battalion was on fire, they looked absolutely unstoppable. They looked like a train that just had no brakes. It really was up to SSGA to make some miracles happen, pull some things out that maybe Mormon Battalion wasn't really ready for on the attacking half, and play the pace that we just saw against Final Form that shut down Mormon Battalion. So as much as that stat is really scary, you do have to put that stat to context. It was also Cafe, which is one of those maps where it is a little bit more 50-50 in terms of attacking and defending. It's one of those kind of wild card maps where there's not really a set pace of how many rounds the defenders would have, And so Mormon Battalion, I think that they're going to make a run for it. I genuinely think that they're going to make MKERS really sweat for this map.
Yeah, we got to see what map they're going to try to make the run on, though. MKERS making sure that they get rid of Lair the first opportunity they get, and it's going to be Consulate, a map that Mormon Battalion, or at least the core of this team, has not only played, but really liked in the past. It's a little bit 50-50. I understand the reasoning behind it. They have had, somewhat of a successful past on playing this map, especially in qualifiers. But again, it's one of those maps where you have to have a really good idea going into it, and they're starting on the defense, as Consulate is going to continue to be one of those more defender-sided maps in the pool.
Well, and I love to see the map bans and picks, because seeing MKERS ban Lair off rip is quite interesting to me, right? Seeing previously, Mormon Battalion seemed almost playing chicken with SSGA on that Lair ban. It was the very final ban that was the decider going into Cafe. So interesting to see MKERS shoving that off immediately and taking us to Consulate, like you're saying, a map that requires a lot of strategy, a lot of coordination, a lot more map knowledge than I think a lot of other maps are. That verticality game, it's kind of similar to Cafe in that way, where if you're able to dominate you can dominate all 3 floors from the very top. You can attack basement from the 3rd floor, or for the 2nd floor, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I think that might be a playing field for both of these teams.
Yeah, this is also a map that I believe in Element 3 MKERS had a little bit trouble on. I know there was at least 1 or 2 times they played this in Element where they won either max regulation or into overtime. And it's a big map, so especially starting on the attack. This is not only one of the bigger maps in the pool, but also the way it's laid out with these interconnecting hallways. It also, in a way, makes it very disconnected. Like, if you have someone die over in Archives and the push is still upstairs, you're not going to be able to immediately get that refrag unless you have the attacking players positioned, unless you're expecting to get that refrag. So these isolated hero plays on the attack, not only will they be less common, but if we do see them, they're not going to be set up for success compared to other maps, like perhaps a Clubhouse.
And I also think Mormon Battalion has one little leg up going into Consulate compared to MKERS, is Mormon Battalion are kind of willing to play really weird positions and spots, maybe even having a roamer tucked into a corner, and Consulate having so many rooms, a massive map with a lot of corners, a lot of places that you can really hide into. I think a team like Mormon Battalion might tuck somebody into some weird little spot, get them in a little corner under a desk, and play spoiler against MKERS attack.
And, again, talking about the overall complexity of Consulate, going back to, the IGL, the team captain, XGS, I think one of his best capabilities is not going to be his gun. He's not going to always show up on the board, even though in recent times he has had very decent stats, a lot of the time going, whether it be on the KD side, relatively even. but he's a player who has a really good mind for the game. Dives into the theory side of how Siege is played. And a map like Consulate, I think, is really where you can run around with those ideas that you come up on paper. But at the end of the day, you can have the best idea. You can have the best theory possible for Consulate, but you still have to play. You still have to put it into execution, and that's what we're going to be seeing today for against Makers.
Oh, some interesting bands going out here. The Blitz is the one that's going to be pulled out of the shields. I know Mormon Battalion is a big fan of those shields, especially Exige being that main shield player for that side. So interesting that it's Blitz, the one that's taken out, rather than the Monty. So, I mean, it does kind of, Blitz kind of goes hand in hand with that Mormon Battalion almost shotgun-y kind of play style of just getting in there, taking up the space really fast, and putting that pressure onto Makers. Monty is one of those operators that you need to work a little bit slower. We saw it with when SSGA pulled it out just barely. It's a little bit more of that slower pace, taking up that space, and being able to have an IGL like Exige kind of make a plan from the position that he's at. So I like that kind of change for Makers, force them to play a little bit slower and allow Makers to have more audibles on the defending half once they get there in 6 rounds to maybe punish Mormon Battalion for playing that Monty over the Blitz.
And overall, especially now with the Monty being let up, this is just a really favorable, or a rather even-sided matchup for Mormon Battalion. Not only are they going to a map that they genuinely really love, but also they're getting those operators like the Monty that Exige can fall back onto, or maybe perhaps a player that can still shotgun, that can fall behind. And not only is that Monty up for those capabilities, but also if they may perhaps when they switch over onto the attack have problems going into getting control around the map, pushing that tempo, not wasting a lot of time clearing those roams, that Monty is going to be there to make it just a little bit easier for them.
I'm really curious to see what Mormon Battalion is going to start to prioritize on the defending half. If they're a team that likes to go towards the basement or more towards the first floor. I feel like there's a lot of teams that have preferences there. And Mormon Battalion, they have their love for this map, and I'm curious to see with their research and homework on Makers during Element playing on Consulate, what sites they want to start bringing Makers to. I don't know if you have any sort of insight on that, Goose.
Consulate is a map where essentially there's 2 main bomb sites that you'll see a lot of times, going upstairs to offices and meeting, and then eventually, whether they win or have a very unsuccessful round, defending teams will fall back down to the basement. The question is, not a lot of teams like to play archives, and Mormon Battalion starting on the defense, the question is, if they can't continuously have success on those 2 main bomb sites, will they then choose to fall back onto that archives position, which is such a difficult bomb site, mostly because you have to clear basically the entire map, worry about those C4s below. It's just a whole egg case in its own. But, as I talked about before, a lot of teams, including Mormon Battalion for their very first round, will be taking us to this meeting and office bomb site.
Now we see it. The second floor finally in game. We got the long tech pause out of the way before the map, so we don't have to slow down like we saw on Skyscraper. And it might be Makers playing a fast pick here. Interesting the Hibana pickup on the second floor. Usually you see things more like the Ace, like the Thermite, to get that main single breach over towards Oval. But they also have Clax on the Amaru, maybe playing on that hatch, but it's actually an opening spawn peak that's shut down, and the shot on top of the body just to secure the kill. The IGL of Exige now gets to play the camera game, and almost like an RTS, like he's playing StarCraft, control his teammates from his cameras.
Yeah, that's not exactly an opening pick you want to give away. To be fair, on the contrary, it is going to be that cap can. Hopefully, all of his utility will be down. I'm not exactly sure if he has a C4, but not a whole lot of utility lost, and not map control gained really either. Not really taking that main entry point. So still working that roof, getting these windows and walls open, getting just simply the drone early part of the round over, getting as much intel as possible, not really deciding on one avenue of the map. And as I say that, Kobe finds his way right into offices. And Soda, if you look, it's clear this is going to be relatively an easier position for him to take.
It's the shotgun that is going to be quickly going through break, and there comes the Dokubi logic bomb. There's the opening frag with the SMG. Giddy from the backside, able to trade up Toaster as well, and MKERS is starting to make MORMON Battalion's defense sweat quite a bit. Hectic and Xer trying to find any sort of collapse, but it's Kobe able to secure that kill, and Woos with the 417, shutting down Hectic, making sure he gets one on the board for the freebies. And MKERS might have just shut us up about the MORMON Battalion support that we were giving them a little bit earlier.
That was another one. Wow. Okay.
Oh
That was a relatively free side over by offices. You saw that there was no player playing that shield on Soda, no one even in the office's position. So as soon as MKERS got that info, relayed it to Kobe, he was able to just Amaru into the window, take the control, and they didn't even really have anyone over in meeting either. So as soon as they got that pick, after losing the first one downstairs, that forced MORMON Battalion, because they had no one over, to rotate over, try to retake and put pressure onto that plant. But by the time they already reached over, MKERS had an entire crossfire being held up, had control of that main open area by spiral stairs, and it's just really a poor round. Not a whole lot being put up by MORMON Battalion there.
Well, I also love this little, I don't know if they did their homework on MORMON Battalion from yesterday's match, or if this is just their play style of MKERS, and it's just kind of exactly what the flaw of MORMON Battalion is. But MORMON Battalion yesterday didn't really know what to do when they were getting droned out, when that one man that was kind of isolated off the defense, once he got seen from a drone or some sort of information, they kind of freaked out, didn't really know what to do about being spotted. MKERS there with Kobe getting droned in with the aggressive swings of the Supernova, catching a lot of MORMON Battalion members off guard, opening up a lot of space. MORMON Battalion kind of just folded in front of it.
MKERS going for not only a relatively basic operator lineup, but a very strong 4 to 5 man push over by this backside of the map, over by Archives, making sure that they want to take the space. They want to not only clear it with the Monty, but have the players to back him up. They want to make sure that they take this control over by the site, close to the site, relatively quickly, not really wanting to worry about these roamers, essentially just completely ignoring them. If you look over with that Legion and Xer on the top floor, they've just completely ignored them. But it's actually Toaster to punish Kobe in the opening pick.
And that's a huge opening pick, right? That's the Nomad kind of on that roam duty to cancel out any of the flanks that Xer or Eli might be finding. And now they have a little bit more space to work with. They do still have to worry about Woos, who's playing outside towards the window here. He's going to be getting the information of Eli towards service. Having the ping down as well, holding it perfectly. But this is still giving MKERS a little bit of space. They're going to mirror trick the Thermite, or attempt to. They're able to get it. Exige, barely able to get that. That's good tech there. And this is going to slow MKERS down quite a bit, especially when they have that man disadvantage here.
Yeah, that is really huge. And because there's been such a split switch around from MKERS, having that player on the window and then having the Thermite rotate over, you only have Giddy paired with Packer in this backside position, and because of the lack of control, because they didn't go for the vertical and clear out these defenders, MKERS essentially have nothing. Even though they have complete control of Archives and almost a kill, they don't really have anything they can really work with.
And it's the little DMR, I mean, it's the TSG shotgun from Hectic. That's going to be absolutely brutal, taking down Giddy. That's Packer's support, so he's quick to drop as well. Woo's getting aggressed upon, able to get Exige to put one on his gun, that tally mark, but shut down immediately. And now Bino, who's been a little bit invisible in both of these rounds, shot through the Hibana, the Mira that was there before. Toaster with a great shot. And now MORMON Battalion bouncing back a little bit, shutting down what MKERS' game plan was, and quite early, to be honest.
Yeah, it was one of those rounds where MKERS tried to do too much. As soon as they got that Archives control, they threw a player off, had one player on the window potentially to catch off the cross, but then the Legion and the Vigil on the side of Xer realized that they didn't need to go for the retake. They didn't need to backstab because they didn't really have that much map control. They could continue to hold that vertical play over by Piano above, and even if Makers were able to make their way into sight, they could just deny the plant, kill those entry players like that Habana making their way into the site right from above with no one above. And it's one of those rounds where Makers simply just did not do enough homework. They didn't do enough of that due diligence that they so needed to do to set up an actual push. They try to get a little bit of a fast one off there.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? If you make the decision to ignore the roamers, then you better be taking a lot of space towards the site to force the roamers to make a mistake, make a decision that might end up going to the attackers, punishing them on the roam. We saw Bino on the gridlock kind of having that idea, but once Bino, after a little bit of time falling off that angle and then being picked off later in the round, Mormon Battalion was able to play their game, and Makers didn't really give them any problems that needed a solution, like we saw in that first round with this Amaru, with the fast take that Makers might be deciding to do once again.
I'm looking for who has DPs. It looks like it. Giddy on that Capta is going to be able to not only use his smokes, but also the fires to deny the swing on to that single window over by offices. And potentially Kobe, whether or not he goes into the window, jumps out immediately to bait the utility from the defense. It does look like they're going for this very quick rush plant paired with the Grim Bees. But C4 goes out.
Ooh, yeah, Xer able to shut it down quite beautifully, finding a second on top of it as well, and Eli taking down Packer. So now it's Woos and Giddy, the two members that are supposed to be playing the post plant, forced to now get the bomb down themselves. 2-4, the Grimby is still spotting out Xer during the rotate, and Giddy is able to get one freebie. Woos is finding another one as well. That's the IGL down of Mormon Battalion. So now all of a sudden, this round feels a lot easier to take over. 2 smoke arrows still available for Giddy, as well as a frag grenade and one more lying scan for them to play off of. This feels really winnable. The drone's going out from Woos and a lot of time to start breaking it down, Goose.
Yeah, they have plenty of time. Not only that, but they have this drone. It's going to be able to get so much utility. Even if they can't find a player, they could essentially eliminate the positions that they possibly are. A cross angle hold held by the last 2 players. It's going to have to be something they need to deal with quickly.
And that lion scan is going to be giving away where Xer is, but it's thrown away. They didn't get a lot of space from that scan. You're still forced to make something happen in fast. Time is running out. They're able to get towards the B site, getting to console. A shot towards Eli, but it's actually the bullets going into Giddy's body, taking him down to pretty low HP. Mormon Battalion has the utility to work with, has the space to use. Giddy, low HP, finally taken out from Xer, but the 417 is able to trade it out. Goyo, Vulcan canister towards A, able to be popped as well to maybe give him a little bit of space, but they have the information of where Eli was a while ago, but he's finding this really fast rotate from reception, going to secretary, shotgun out as well. This is going to be terrifying for Woos to manage, and it's the Mossberg shutting it down, a teabag on top of it. That's just the Mormon Battalion special there. The defuse, because hey, Eli doesn't care about the Kate. Oh, I'm not gonna lie, Goose. When that happens to me in solo queue, it's actually the most tilting thing in the world, and I can't imagine what the comms are like for Makers right now.
I don't think Makers are going to be, too ahead of themselves. Actually, a lot of the times, teams like this, people don't know, just turn off all chat. When you see teams like Makers talking, they're talking into the void. And teams like Makers aren't going to really have that mental capability be hit as easy as other teams. And again, it's one of those rounds where I like the idea that they wanted to bait the default rush plant over by offices and then get the flex over by, the stack in B, but it's something that's just so easily read. It's been done time and time after again. It's kind of default in ranked even. So it's one of those plays where it was relatively easy for Mormon to read into and counter, especially with the heavy presence on site with so many anchor players. It was just really easy for them to shut down. Eventually, they did let it dwindle down from a 4v2 to a 2v2, so a little bit of a worrying presence there. But again, they still won the round. They shut them down, and so far, Mormon Battalion having a very strong hold after winning 2 rounds in a row.
Yeah, that first round that was lost from Maroon Battalion almost made me get a little worried for them because they love this momentum. They strive off of it, but once they lose that momentum, they let rounds run away from them. We saw it against SSGA. SSGA won out hard on the attack, and Maroon Battalion just couldn't keep up. Them making that comeback after the first loss is giving me a little bit more hope going into this defensive half. Like we said, finding the 2 in a row, and they're looking for a little bit more extra with a little awkward timing on that jiggle peek, missing the foot, but here comes the reaggress here from, I believe it is Woos on the ace, has the briefcase in hand, contesting it, but he's going to take the damage from it and go along with his story.
I really love this upstairs hold from Mormon Battalion, and not only do you have presence over in the vertical play above the bomb site, but you also have a player over by offices and archives, and you're going to be able to play this position really well.
Oh my god.
And XGS, I talked about how he's had your relative success on the actual board with his gun, and he's going to shut down Packer early on, completely untraded, keep in mind.
Yeah, and that's huge. That only one logic bomb was used at the beginning, or as soon as he died, right? And so now that's one more logic bomb off the table that Mormon Battalion doesn't have to worry about. And MKERS, their comp kind of, to me, seems like they really needed that Dokkaebi to be that kind of knife, that dagger in the back. Take a lot of space with it, with the information that the logic bomb gives, and now it's kind of up to Bino to clear second floor a little bit by himself with these Bs, but it's Kobe picking up Heptic, one of the only people that are on site. Eli's dropped as well, finally traded from Xer here, thank god, but Xer is taking shots. Giddy from downtown, from Tellers, able to trade it out and keep Kobe alive. Down but not out. Toaster now has to get that kill secured, and there it is. MKERS with a man advantage and a lot of time to start working the map a little bit more. Giddy trying to find XGS towards Spiral. Shot going down. Some flurries back, but nothing permanent just yet. Woos, though, playing towards yellow in basement where XGS is actually rotating from. He might be able to catch him off rip, but Toaster is catching Bino on the other side. Was that Grim that was tucked into first floor, and so now Woos and Giddy starting to maybe get reattached to themselves, try to get this attack going down, and they need to flood Toaster out before XGS is able to support. He's playing towards closet, exposed to the window, but all members in sight. Some free fires going through, but it's this dagger in the back of XGS that might play spoiler. Red ping's going down from MKERS, but it's not enough. Giddy able to pick up that kill, and now this 1 HP XGS with a Vector in hand, forced a little timer here with the red pings to get a 1 kill as the plant goes down, but it's Giddy that shuts it down and gets the momentum back into Mormon Battalion's hands.
A really great round, especially by Kobe. And not only is MKERS a good team, but every player individually is so skilled. If you leave any tiny gap in your defense that can allow a player to slip through and find his way into the bomb site, they will take it. They will identify it fast and react fast. And that's exactly why Kobe was able to open up this round and eventually allow his teammates to shut it down. And on top of that, XGS making a very questionable swing over by bottom spiral stairs really just continue to open that round up, continue to give them those isolated ones, and MKERS reading everything that Mormon Battalion really gave them.
MKERS doing a great job of also just using the full extent of the map. It was Woos from Tellers able to trade it out from the other side. And I mean, it just seems that MKERS is maybe knowing the map a little bit more than Mormon Battalion, but that is only one more round that they lost. A 2-2 split so far, and I feel like Consulate is another one of those maps where, you know, it kind of can go either way. Obviously, you probably want to shoot for a 4-2 split if you're Mormon Battalion or a Mormon Battalion fan, but also it seems like so far their attacking side is just a lot stronger than their defense. Oh my god, it's the hop in. Xer punishing Kobe immediately. The logic bomb unfazed. But they're not putting their foot off the gas pedal just yet. It's going to be some hard breaches towards Garage.
Yeah, that is just such an unlucky play. If Xer was not in that position, Kobe would have still been able to be alive. That's one of those plays that Xer just simply could not have read. He was just in the right place at the right time, and he reaped the rewards. But the problem for MKERS is even after losing that pick, not only have they not cleared out Xer,
Oh my god.
now they eventually do. Packer was there, a little bit of the, the color glitch, so I thought that was a teammate, but it's actually going to be Packer. Eventually is able to shut him down and pushes Toaster back down onto the site. But Exige, throughout this entire game, especially from that very first round where he lost his life early on, has tried to play aggressive, has tried to retake this map control, and MKERS continuing to just shut down these aggressive, isolated roamers.
And MKERS adapting to what Mormon Battalion is bringing to the table quite well. We saw last time they're attacking against Basement, it was the 2 roamers towards the 2nd floor that were uncleared, and MKERS just didn't really have a good, cohesive attacking strategy going into it. I mean, they had archives, right? And now they're putting pressure towards Garage and soaking out these players that are playing towards the 2nd floor. The roamers now off the board. Now they have a lot of time to be able to look back at the basement and get this attack going and maybe go through with their plan that they had in theory in the previous round.
And a relatively favorable time count, a minute left on the board. Toaster a little bit low, but MKERS, they don't have a great opportunity. Packer in not only a very powerful position, but a very dangerous one. Completely alone. No players around him to even give him intel. Nonetheless, get the refrag if he loses his life. But if he's able to spot this gap and Mormon Battalion allow him to walk without punishing him, he could open up and potentially shut down this round.
35 seconds. Clock still ticking. MKERS with a lot of utility to work with as well. 2 lion scans available and trackers from Jackal may be able to spot some people out or also put some pressure down, but it's actually Giddy who's shut down from Exige. A little bit of a re-aggression from Lockers able to shut it down, and Packer is trying to swing out and get the trade, but it's a little too late. Here comes the lion scan. The Malusi is going to be giving it away, but MKERS, the re-aggression is absolutely phenomenal. A beautiful pinch between Yellow and Hallway. Woos clearing out with that beautiful heady with the 417, and MKERS showing why they won Element just a few weeks ago.
The gap spotting is just perfect. I mean, you saw that there was an Oryx on that hard breach wall by Pillar, and whether or not he was aware, he was being pressured over by Lockers and wasn't able to swing onto it, on top of Woos with the DMR by bottom Yellow. Not only was it a perfect gap spotted by MKERS, but they set up that plant perfectly, drawing out the Mormon Battalion defenders, forcing them to swing and get aggressive. But MKERS, they had the crosses, they had the lines of sight ready, and were prepared for it. They wanted them to swing so they could shut them down and continue to put their planner in a safer and safer position. It really just goes to show that you can have all the gun skill, but what makes MKERS, teams like them, so good is their ability to not only read, but set up these attacks.
I love their mid-round audibles that they've been bringing to the table as well. I feel like that's, to me, what makes or breaks a tier 3, 4 roster to make them a big dog like these tier 2, tier 1 rosters like MKERS here, is being able and being willing to switch up your strat and switch up your attack or your defense mid-round without the kind of buffer or communication barrier that a lot of fresh rosters have. MKERS is doing a great job of knowing and identifying the gaps, like you're saying, punish them, and doing it fast. They're so efficient with this time, like you're talking about at the end round. They cleared out the roamers and had a lot of space and still had a minute remaining to be able to continue to drone, work into the basement, and figure out how they want to end the round. And they did it with swiftness and absolute beauty, to be honest.
Mormon Battalion, for what is going to be their final defense, will be in meeting an office bomb site, and it's going to be a bomb site that they had not a whole lot of success last time around that we saw that, but this time around, the 2nd round in a row, they're able to shut down that entry player. And MKERS, they've yet to been able to deal with this Mira over by Break with such solidified position, not only by the Mira, but being backed up by Exige, but eventually they able to find him out.
And Eli, on the other side, able to get a nitro kill on Bino. That's the Grim, so no more Bs available. One more Flores drone to get some information out as well, but Xer able to get out with his life as well. He was trying to support Exige, maybe try to get him out of vending. But obviously, he's dead now. Can't support a dead body. And now, with the man advantage, they're backed themselves into their own site. Safety. They are able to play off the Malusis. They have 3 Toxic Babes to be able to waste the time that MKERS is starting to run out of. Global camera shut out, but Eli gets the information, holds the tight angle with the shotgun, has a little bit of maybe magic that he showed off earlier with that shotgun, and wants to prove some more here.
The capability to get these trade backs is so good, but it's better for Mormon Battalion. But Kobe, an unrelenting force.
Opening up the round a little bit more. Eli needs to get aggressive and maybe fast. Finds a beautiful shot and takes down Giddy for the hell of it. Eli recovering the round once again, allowing Mormon Battalion to have that 3-3 half. And with an extremely high win rate on the attacking side, Mormon Battalions are getting a bit of a breath of fresh air going into the second half.
Bravo to Mormon Battalion, putting up not only a very convincing 3-3 half on their defense, even though that is not exactly what we see a whole lot. We're more used to those 4-2 halves. 3-3 are not far and few between, though. But not only were they able to expose the gaps in the attack for MKERS, but they were able to take advantage of them and really reap the rewards, and that's exactly what you need to see. But none of that matters now, because now they have to translate that success into the attack against MKERS on the defense, which is going to be a completely different monster. The good thing for Mormon Battalion, though, is that they were not afraid to get aggressive early on. They were not afraid to push those entry engagements onto MKERS when they were on the defense. A lot of the time, when Mormon Battalion and MKERS got into an entry engagement, it was because there was a defender going out of his way to meet an attacking player at those entry points around the map. So, in theory, the problem of, having aggression on the attack should not be there for Mormon Battalion.
They also have XGS on the Monty. It's what we were talking about before. MKERS utilized the Monty once or twice, but without really a lot of success. Mormon Battalion, though, has shown a lot of success with shields being on their roster, and I think that Mormon Battalion is going to be able to work MKERS a little bit harder than MKERS works Mormon Battalion. Siege already working up yellow stairs, has the information from that Flores playing from the balcony, and it's going to start forcing the utility coming out of MKERS and quite fast. You don't really want to be burning that Goyo canister on top yellow that fast, right? Because now once it fades away, you still have 2 minutes remaining, and Siege is able to get a lot of information and a lot of space for the rest of Mormon Battalion to work with.
So far, a relatively slow opening round for Mormon Battalion. Simply just trying to find a way. Not necessarily scared, but they're very cautious. They don't want to give too much. They're feeling a little bit of that phantom pressure, not knowing and not having 100% of that intel on the positions of these MKERS defenders, and because of that, they haven't really been able to find a definitive way. We have XR over below in archives, and not really anyone over there. Exige on top yellow is going to be the driving force for this Mormon Battalion attack, but they're going to have to meet with a definitive hold for not only Mormon Battalion, but also Kobe.
I do want to point out the fact that Mormon Battalion still has a lot of drones in this round. The 3rd drone just shot out from MKERS, but about 20 seconds ago, they had just about full drone usage. Mormon Battalion, though, doesn't really seem to be caring about the droning. They want to be using more human intel, right? They're using Exige as the intel towards yellow, and finally Eli is able to support. Hectic is kind of trying to play off of that intel that Exige is getting with his body, and Eli taking out Kobe, finally the member that they've been working on the kill for since the beginning of the round, and that might be the opening pick that Mormon Battalion needs to start taking over the second floor. It is the next person, the next attraction for Mormon Battalion, but it's not going to be that easy. Exige taking a lot of damage from a pre-placed Nitro. Eli getting a little bit frisky here. Exer getting an opening kill and a beautiful punch hole from Woos to shut down Eli. So 3-3. MKERS doing a great job of wasting time. A couple Goyle canisters to play with and Toxic Babes to push through. So Mormon Battalion needs to make something happen and really fast. Toaster forced out of the building. Hectic really low HP, and Exer needs to start working some of this site, but is just unable to. It's Giddy, Packer, and Woos all winning their ones, all shutting down the attack. Makers are just looking ruthless.
Yeah, that was a difficult round for Mormon Battalion. Not necessarily because they played it poorly, but they never had not only a definitive hold, but a definitive idea of what exactly they wanted to do. They did get a good opening pick on Kobe, but they essentially just isolated that Monty in the side of connector. As soon as they realized that, okay, Monty's alone in connector, no one is top yellow yet, we then had Giddy run all the way over with that Goyo onto the head holes over by bathroom and completely just cut off. If that player, which eventually did push up to top yellow, tried to retake, tried to give some support to the Montu to eventually get a plant down, it simply was just shut down. It never was able to even start. A really good round for Makers. And Mormon Battalion, in that later half of the round, they had a good idea of the positions of the defenders. They simply were not able to actually execute on them.
Yeah, it's that lack of almost mid-round audible. Makers giving a lot of resistance for that top yellow work. It seemed like Mormon Battalion just were really stubborn. They really wanted to work that connector side, and I mean, hey, they eventually got it, right? But it took them 2.5 minutes to get, and like 3 bodies. So Makers doing a great job of slowing them down, meeting them at their aggression, playing the time game beautifully. And I mean, you have to expect that from such a great roster like Makers has.
And a relatively, I wouldn't say slow game for Kobe, but not exactly what we're used to seeing. But Woo's going absolutely huge in that kill department, making up for it. And again, we've talked about teams that are just so deeply layered like Makers. If you have one player that is not showing up or relatively slow in the department that they need to show up in, there's going to be a player that can fill that role, that can really step up to that position. And that's exactly what we have seen. Kobe, though, trying to retake, potentially shut down an attacker that is not going to be there.
Well, speaking of shut down, though, we just saw XGS going towards the main garage wall, expecting an easy hard breach for the ace. But there's a Kaid trap, and I don't think they realize that they have a Kaid, and they don't have any EMPs on their side, so now they have to play this vertical control that looked like it was him fighting a bunch of phantoms, and now those phantoms are becoming a reality. Toaster and Eli starting to aggress towards where Kobe was holding, but has the support of Giddy. Both of them really low HP, though the Goo Mine taking down on Toaster. Forcing him to half HP, but he eventually finally gets a kill. That's actually Eli finding that. Toaster able to get the needle out of his ankle, but Kobe is going to be the next line of defense. Those layers that we're talking about. He's the second layer of the onion. Push from Hectic, shut down immediately, and now looking for more. Finding a second, quickly shut down from XGS, though. That was looking a little scary, but speaking of scary, Eli finding one. Shut down, though, from servers. Packer good for that one, and it's now 2 DMRs versus a little bit of a scarier looking Mormon Battalion attack. But Mira showing off the yellow hallway player of, I believe that was Toaster, playing towards there. And now they have a little bit of time to try to make some sort of work happen. It's going to be a retake towards Spiral. It's quickly spotted out from the camera, the default camera, something that maybe should have been shot out a bit earlier. But now Makers starts to slow down the Mormon Battalion attack and wait for what their decision is going to be in this late round.
20 seconds left. Absolutely nothing aside from that singular drone. Woos and Packer, they're aware of where this push is going to be coming from. It's going to be a dual push from XGS.
And Packer finding the opening and finding the second as well. The off angle is perfect, doesn't even need the support of his teammate. Makers are forcing Battalion to work for it, and I don't think they have the effort to go through.
I was worried because Makers are going to make Mormon Battalion work for absolutely everything around the map that is not the bomb site. And if we look at every time that Mormon Battalion get to the bomb site, sure, it's in favorable positions, a 2v2, a 3v3, but they just don't have, all of their utility has been used on clearing all of the maps. They didn't get wall up and they were forced to just swing a dry doorway. So even if you do start to work that man count onto Makers, by the time Mormon Battalion even get close to the site, they're drained. They have next to no utility, next to no drone economy, so they can't get that additional drone and that additional intel, and they're kind of just left in the dark and not really a whole lot to do with it.
It just Consulate is one of those maps where like you really just have to be on your game, and if you make one slip up, it's just going to be punished, right? There's not a lot of room, and you cannot slow down a bit. There's too much map to go through to slow down even a pinch. Mormon Battalion hasn't really figured out that groove. This was a map that they're quite good at, but I don't think they're used to the level of defense that MKERS are bringing to it. MKERS are doing a great job of slowing down the Battalion, making them really work for every single bit that Mormon Battalion are trying to get, and I don't think they're used to this level of defense that MKERS are bringing to the table.
And I think that is a perfect explanation, is that what Mormon Battalion is bringing on this attack is not bad. It works. It gives them success. They are able to dwindle down that man count. It's not enough. They need to bring just a little bit more, and Packer just runs a 5 mile out to shut down Eli. We talked about that mental on how MKERS are not going to be chalked, but on the other side of Mormon Battalion, if you continue to lose gunfights to these track stars known as Packer Star, it's going to really dwindle on that mind.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I feel like that is kind of the final nail in the coffin. That last kill, if you're Eli, your mental's probably chalked at that point. These rounds have just been absolutely exhausting. Packer running out of a spawn peak I didn't even know existed, being shut down before you can even interact. I think finally getting off the drone, but speaking of getting off, Klax is forced off of vending, but Packer is able to execute upon that, getting one kill towards Exige and Giddy able to take down Toaster, slowing down the push on vending, and it's the re-aggression from Klax. Kobe finding that kill. 1v5 now. Xer left all alone with a DMR with Kobe and an SMG 12, finding one kill and some more bullets in the body, like he's a zombie, I guess. I mean, I know it's for a mental advantage, but, you know, gotta keep it a little realistic here. Xer finding Klax as well. Kobe shut down. To make it realism happen a little bit more, he finds a third. Wait a minute, I was gonna say this is just chalk. This is over, but wait a minute. Xer, the guy that talks the most, I would think, now starting to heat up a little bit. Doesn't have the briefcase though. Those are that's upstairs. I don't know if MKERS knows that fully, but MKERS with this crossfire is going to shut it down. Bino killing him down on the cross. And yeah, Mormon Battalion looks pretty chalked, to be honest.
I don't know where Xer was going there. A little bit of a confusing play there at the end, but nonetheless, I think the perfect little micro play to point out, if we're comparing the defense of MKERS to Mormon Battalion, is that MKERS, they attacked the exact same position over by archives, or not archives, but offices rather. And the problem was, though, Mormon Battalion didn't have a shield, a player, nothing by Soda. This time around, simply because they had Packer there, even if the gunfights completely failed in that hallway, Packer was there, able to swing and get the cross. It's those micro decisions, the lack of on the defense for Mormon Battalion, rather, that really goes to show that MKERS simply are just bringing that extra length of, you know, strategy, whether it be a simple player in a position or if it's defender utility meant to stop and slow down Mormon Battalion. It's a lot more they have to deal with rather than what they put up on their defense.
Well, that's what shows to me that MKERS have just a higher knowledge of this map than Mormon Battalion. To me, plays like that vending execute, just showed to me that MKERS has scrimmed this map many times. Because, like you were saying, Mormon Battalion, not having the shield, not having support on vending, they probably got away with that in some scrims or some match days because the enemy they were facing off against just didn't have that same level of clearing. But MKERS, facing teams in Element that would have absolutely eviscerated a vending player with no shield and no support, now have that understanding, that knowledge of, I need layers in this position. This is a volatile position. Having this hallway control is really important. What if they throw a flash at me? Well, if they do, I need a Womai, I need a Jaeger, or I need another man to hold my cross and have them play through it. MKERS now finding match point are just showcasing that they are just simply a better team. And I eat my words as Packer dies, I believe, on another run out.
With smoke of all players. To be fair, though, Packer started out, relatively slow, having even a scoreline at one time 4-4. Now has heated up a little bit aside from this round, losing his life. Not going to be able to get that over-aggressive spawn peak run out this time around, but, in a very advantageous position, and he gets exactly what he was looking for.
Might find a third as well. There it is. The double kill of the round, but his third kill of the map. In round 10, you're more than doubling your kill count. That's how you know you've got a roster full of superstars. A couple Tachankas missing, forcing Kobe off of his own angle. But MORMON Battalion forced to claw in. Woos catching Hectic into a repel. So Eli trying to keep the gas pedal down. And Goomine's going to give away his position. There's a lot of layers to this defense. And part of that layer, I guess, is Woos going in for the knife. A pistol out. Whipping Bino down, and it's up to Kobe trying to get a kill with the Tachanka. 1v1. This is the closest attacking round MORMON Battalion has ever faced themselves in. Kobe finding themselves a really low HP. The Thorn nade almost enough to kill him, and the third one does. Woos pre-planning them. No way he just baited him into the room with 3 Thorn Razor Blooms to shut down the round. Oh my god, Maker. They're just 3 steps ahead. They're playing chess. MORMON Battalion, I don't even know if they're playing checkers. They might be playing with like sticks and a rock at this point.
It is wow. It's just, to be fair, that questionable decision of running, over-aggressing, not only over-aggressing, you could just simply see that in that position, I believe it was either Eli or Xer, just overheated. Going for that kill, was firing and just stopped. He just overheated and it overtook his brain and made him make a couple of questionable decisions. But that's not the first and only time that we saw a lot of questionable plays and decisions from players on MORMON Battalion. We saw that a lot of the rounds throughout this entire map, and those decisions, those mistakes eventually do snowball. And on top of that, when you're going up against a team that just brings so much to the table like MKERS, eventually you'll be outbested.
Yeah, I mean, MORMON Battalion showed off their little bit of luster, their little bit of a sparkle that they've brought to the table multiple times, but unfortunately, when you're up against a team like MKERS, you just can't get away with it anymore. And I mean, I will say, Goose, I did give a little bit of, or I got a little bit of insight from MORMON Battalion going into the pregame. I heard their the verse that they were studying, and I actually wrote it down here. But they need to do better at religion school, because the verse is Exage 3:10, thou shalt outfrag MKERS. And I don't think anyone a part of MORMON Battalion went positive that game. No. So maybe need to hit the books a little bit more. It's not the greatest showing there.
MORMON Battalion will now fall 0-2. And to be fair, to the contrary, it's against MKERS and Fluffy Hammers. So probably two of your most difficult opponents. You still have SSG on the board, but these are teams that most likely will make it to that top 3. And they still have potential. They're not out. They can still make that play-in, maybe in some universe make top 3. They're not out, but they are in a very difficult situation now.
Yeah, it's that kind of 4th place spot that is kind of the question mark, I think, in Group A. I feel like if you asked anyone a part of production, any of us, we would probably put Fluffy Hammers, SSGA, and MKERS top 3. Order would be argued, but those would be easily top 3. And I think MORMON Battalion is one of those teams that is in the contention for that 4th spot, and maybe one of those play-in teams. But we'll just have to see how their run continues as they start to, trudge their way through this really deadly group. But we get to flip sides a little bit and check out some more matches here soon. That's it from me as T-Van as the caster. But you get to keep Goose for the rest of the day. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon.